which is why you got to be honest about what you actually want. Now, honesty does not mean whimsy, which leads me to the next characteristic of a good vision. A good vision is realistic. So when I thought about joining the military, eventually I went and saw an Army recruiter. And this recruiter, after learning some things, I had a degree, I'm into fitness. This recruiter was like, hey, have you ever thought about trying out for special forces? And I never considered that because I didn't think it was something you could do off the street. One, two, I didn't know how to swim. And so I was just like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that for a litany of reasons here. But after talking with this recruiter, and we'll get more into the swimming part of it here in a moment. After talking with this recruiter, I went home and I started to research it. And what I realized is everything in me wanted to give this a try. Now, a big part of thinking about the military in general, and specifically thinking about special forces, what I knew was I'm signing up to go to war. This again, 2007. We were well into both Iraq and Afghanistan at this point, and the news was showing the reality of people dying every day overseas. So I knew what I was signing up for, and I spent a lot of time thinking about that. I mean, I thought about the worst case scenario, and what contrasted this with engineering, this line of thinking, again, being realistic is about acknowledging risk or acknowledging the worst case scenario should you pursue a course of action related to your goals. So what I knew was signing up for the military and trying out for special forces meant that I was signing up to go to combat. And going to combat meant that I could be captured by the enemy, tortured to death, maimed, IED blast, any number of things that may not even necessarily, that could take my life, but if they didn't take my life, could severely disfigure me and change my experience of the world. And so I spent probably like 2 weeks contemplating heavily what this would mean for my life and what could I do to mitigate this risk at the highest level. And so now, and for me with the military, that just meant taking my training seriously, trying to eat as well as I could or as I understood at the time, making sure I'm in good physical condition, making sure I had a will before I deployed to Afghanistan, making sure I had talked to my parents about, what the potential realities were, et cetera, et cetera. I really just tried to expose myself to the worst case scenario mentally and emotionally. And then I tried to do some risk mitigation. Even trying out for special forces, part of my logic was, if I'm gonna go to the battlefield, why not go with the best in the business, right? And so, acknowledging risk is a big thing. Contrast that with engineering. I never thought about what if I hate my job as an engineer. When I was getting ready to go to college, and then while I was in college, I never even considered that reality of what if I hate this job so much that I want to take my own life because it's making me so miserable. I never considered when I got the car loan, it never dawned on me when I was getting the car loan after I started my job as an engineer, it never dawned on me Travis, what if you decide that you hate your job and you want to leave it, but now you have this 5-year car loan to take care of and you don't have an income anymore. And maybe you can't, and maybe whatever next job you get, you can't match the income you had as an engineer. I wouldn't make as much money as I made as an engineer until my final year in the military. That last year in the military, being deployed to Afghanistan, which makes your money income tax free, and being the highest rank I ever reached in the military, E6 staff sergeant, I think I finally made $50,000 that year. And that's still, I made $60,000 as an engineer. That still wasn't as much as I made as an engineer. So yeah, I never thought about when I was in engineering, I wasn't thinking about the worst case scenario. And what I've learned, and this fact continues to come up as I get older, is every course of action we take in life has risk. There is no risk zone. And so I think people have this idea in their head is that I think a big part of the reason why people were so insistent that I stay an engineer was they had this concept in their head that engineering is the risk-free American dream zone. Like it's the dream. There are no problems there. And that's just crazy, y'all. Like in hindsight, it's like that's ridiculous. Anything can happen at any point to any one of us that is detrimental to our health, or I could go outside, get hit by a car. COVID happened. People get COVID and pass away from respiratory illness or some other random disease. I mean, I was a Green Beret in the Army. Going overseas, you could contract any sorts of the number of times that I ate there were 3 times when I was overseas in Afghanistan. This is a sidetrack, but it relates. There were 3 times when I was overseas in Afghanistan that I ate the local food and I got, I forget what they call it. I want to say it's called gastroenteritis. But basically, in the year that I was deployed to Afghanistan, fortunately there was months separating, but I would eat some local food and then I'd have vomiting and diarrhea aggressively for like a week, and I'd like lose 20 pounds. Then I'd have to gain the weight back, and then we go out again and we'd be trying to build rapport with somebody and they'd offer us some food. I'd eat it, boom, go through it again. So like I did that 3 times in Afghanistan. That could kill somebody, right? And so there is no risk-free path in life. And what we would do better to do is say, okay, if you want to go a certain direction, let's try to anticipate the risk involved. Let's look at what we think might be the worst case scenarios and think about how we might mitigate those things. And let's accept that there are always going to be unknowns in the scenario.